So we have actually it's only a single Blu-ray, and I think I could have started recording this earlier, but the delivery drivers didn't knock when they delivered it, and they forgot to scan it. So Amazon still thinks this is out to be delivered, but it's been on my doorstep apparently for the past hour or two. Oh well, I know it's kind of just one Blu-ray, but you know, it's just going to be a small update. This isn't everything that was supposed to come out today, so I think Amazon isn't being completely consistent with stuff coming out the day that it's released, because there's also, this is a Prisma Illya movie, but there's also a next season that came out. She could save or destroy mankind, but first he has to save her. I guess I'm not quite sure how this relates to the other Prisma Illya stuff. See, we have audio Japanese with English subtitles only. I'm pretty sure the other stuff was dubbed, so that's interesting. Sentai trailers. Maybe they didn't sell as well, so it'd be nice if we kind of had the next season in the series to kind of tell, but I don't know. I guess we'll just have to accept this is what arrived this week. And this is this week's small anime DVD collection update. So, I only watched one anime this week. Don't think I even watched anime. Yeah, I didn't watch anime with my Friday friend. So yeah, I decided to throw on Copcraft just because morbidly curious. So I kind of mentioned that it looks weird. I'm not sure if it would actually work. There's I guess another problem I didn't think of at the time when I opened it, and that's you know, because you have the kind of detective with the gun there, it adds a little concern that it would be a little too film noir. So it's not that film noir is bad, it's just I don't really find it specifically engaging. So for me, something like that, when that tends to be the focus of the show, generally tends to mean that I don't stay attached and don't find it as interesting. You know, that's just the way my own personal preferences sway. I really like it as kind of a seasoning to other shows or movies or whatever. So that would kind of explain why, like, I have a huge appreciation of Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which has a very strong film noir idea, but it does a lot of other really interesting things. You know, Judge Doom is a fascinating character. Christopher Lloyd brings a lot of character to it, which is kind of funny because, you know, there's an intentional inhumanness that he brings to it. For example, very deliberately never blinking, you know, when on camera. You know, not interesting little things like that, just to kind of make the character off-putting. Yeah, and that's basically my plans for tonight, because the communication was a little weird, especially with the late anime. But anyways, back to Copcraft. It doesn't really have that strong of a film noir vibe to it. You know, it's a little more buddy copy, but it's better than that, because buddy copy is another thing that doesn't necessarily pull me in. Usually it needs to also be a seasoning, which kind of says, yeah, you know, you can take, you know, my own opinion with a grain of salt compared to yours, but this doesn't fall into many of the pitfalls of the buddy cop genre that make me kind of indifferent to it as a primary focus per se. To begin with, you know, the show kind of begins with the setup of our main character needing a partner, but it does a really good job of kind of just looking kind of normal, but moving forward fast enough to get into the, wait, fucking what? What? Because, you know, it begins with this obvious drug trading thing going on, and, you know, it initially is, you know, very deliberately intended to look real, you know, just normal for, you know, whatever you would expect from a storytelling drug portrayed thing to be. You know, these people meeting in a back alley, hurry, the cops will find us, blah, 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 blah. And then they're like, yeah, here you go, here's the stuff. It's like, oh, that fairy will make some good drugs. What? And it kind of flows and does some stuff, and it does a pretty good job, I think. Overall, they're both fun characters, which is good, because obviously she's the one that's designed to be, you know, kind of eye-catchy, oh, that's kind of cute, and, you know, basically, she's the thing that's supposed to pop out, but he's pretty good too. I mean, they kind of complement each other well in that regard, because he's actually kind of neat as just kind of this, like, I think maybe one of the problems with film noir is, oh, this person tends to be at the lowest of their life, and so they tend to be not making the best decisions or something like that. I mean, there could be a lot of reasons that I'm not too into that genre or many of its tropes. But in this one, he kind of strikes you as, you know, flawed. You know, he's just human, but he kind of understands that, and he kind of knows what he's doing. Like, you get the real impression of sort of like a real person who understands they don't know everything. They can only go forward with their own hunches and ideas, and for all his flaws, he does a really good job of just kind of creating a kind of stable, I'm not sure if baseline, just stable platform for the two of them, because she's not from the culture, and so, you know, there's this interesting balance that kind of happens that just goes down smoothly. I wouldn't call it like the greatest thing ever. In fact, probably one of the biggest problems with this show is culture clash is kind of an important thing about it. And in fact, given the entirety of this series or season 1, it would be nice if there was more. I'd say culture clash is just kind of the dominant theme, because the idea is, you know, obviously you can see that she's weird, and the idea is this mysterious hyperspace gate appeared in the ocean that we're never allowed to see. We're told about it, we understand some of the interactions with it, but basically, I guess these aliens that look very medieval, human fairy tale-ish can come through, and people from here can go there, but they don't talk about that as much, and we get things from the perspective of the human side, where there's, you know, trafficking of various stuff, which doesn't just include like fairies being able to be made into potent drugs, but also like pornography, because I guess they're a medieval fantasy society, so they barely have photographs or things like that. But the proliferation of pornography is just kind of this weird cultural thing where it's like, it sounded like some people thought they would just make big bucks bringing it there, but they thought that they weren't allowed to, but it sounded like nobody actually gave a rat's ass, so it's weird. But that's kind of sometimes how the cultural clash sort of stuff works. But again, the weakness of the show is this happens not like a long time, but a good amount of time after initial gate contact, the initial meeting of each other, some sort of military thing that went to the other side. I think our cop guy was somehow involved with that, and it's kind of how he became a cop. So it's that far ahead in the future of that stuff, where he's a relatively well-adjusted kind of person, I guess. So for a show that's really about culture shock, it kind of misses out on that, what usually makes that kind of show really great, which is that initial culture shock, which, you know, it's basically a missed thing. Again, the show's interesting without that, but it's interesting just because, you know, the lack of that taking place so much afterwards. It basically kind of boils down to existing current day culture shock stuff. Like, you don't even need the space aliens for a lot of this stuff to exist. I think a really good example comes from really later on, where there's this older guy from across the gate who just really hates rock music, and that's a real life thing as I understand it. There's a lot of societies I've heard specifically of, like, I don't remember the countries. Some Middle Eastern countries. Is that the right location? Probably, but I don't know. Like, because they don't grow up with rock music, the sound of an electric guitar is just really painful and irritating to them. And I don't know if that's an internet meme or not, but this show kind of follows along the lines of a lot of real life stuff like this. Hence the talk about pornography, and like there's some regions of the world where you can't get that, and of course now we got the internet, so pretty much the only place that probably can't get them is North Korea, because I assume that even with the Great Firewall of China in place, there's still stuff going around there. But blah 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 blah. There's all that stuff. The other weakness is that because this theme is kind of there and present, but it doesn't really create this overarching narrative where you feel like it's got a story to tell. It's more like it's got some little stories to tell-ish that are fascinating in their own regard, but it kind of means that watching the series overall, while you do get a little satisfaction for the way certain things are wrapped up, you don't get that, oh, I just finished an epic series sense of satisfaction. Which basically means, it's not like the greatest thing ever, but it's okay. It's watchable. Also, let's see. If we're talking about problems, there was a story arc that was kind of importantly cat-related, which is unfortunate because this is one of those shows that kind of portrays anime cats in a way that is not the way actual cats think. Like, you can kind of tell there's this I'm trying to think there, there's a little bit of personification, yeah, but also this idealization that they kind of make these weird circumstances work in a certain way, but it's like it'd be almost like if somebody had snapshots of what a cat does, but they don't know how the cats actually get to those different things, and they make up stuff that's how humans would do it, kinda. That's a common problem in anime, and unfortunately it was a little stronger for that story, and it was just weird. Also, the coworkers are all scumbags because, they would rather call him a control freak than cook properly. And some of this could be, like there's this huge preference in the way meat is cooked, and in my experience, usually that comes down to, I guess, people being afraid of undercooked meats and people who eat them, missing out on the unique flavors that come from, not cooking your meats until they are gray all the way through. So the important thing there is, I acknowledge there's differences, but there are legitimate understandings about why some of those are good and not, and why you're more likely to, I think, for example, find people using A1 steak sauce on well done steak, but people doing medium rare not doing that. This isn't to say that there isn't some value in the taste of a well cooked steak as an example, but it is understood that a lot of the flavor that comes from a steak being a steak comes from like the fat and not overcooking it and stuff like that. And medium rare, as people know, is about when the fat melts. Now that, not to say that every piece of meat should be medium rare. For example, hamburgers should be thoroughly cooked. The problem is, when you're dealing with beef in particular, the kind of problems you can encounter with it is stuff that's on the outside of the meat, that gets on the outside of the meat. And so with a steak, all you really need to do is make sure that the outside gets cooked enough and kills anything that might be outside of it, and you're pretty much guaranteed to never run into any foodborne allergens short of the meat having gone actually bad. Which usually when you don't cook it a lot, you can taste a lot easier and you know something's wrong. This is why one of these days I actually want to try my steak cooked blue, which I think should happen at a steakhouse, because in theory the steakhouse would know better how to do that properly. Blue means that you literally just kiss the steak to it. You really don't do any cooking of it at all, just enough to kill whatever's on the surface. It's neat, but medium rare is again when the fats start melting and dissolving flavor into the meat itself. And so it's kind of hard because on the rare occasion I do go to a steakhouse, I should treat myself to the kind of steak that I know tastes best and not just to one where it's like I want to challenge myself by eating it rarer than ever. But I've gone on an aside because the point is with hamburger meat, you take this meat and you kind of ground it up, right? And I'm sure plenty of people who are vegetarians are probably like, oof, but it's important to kind of understand what happens to the food that people are eating. Because, like, you know, if you're going to try and change people's minds, then you're not going to do that if you're getting things blatantly wrong. But hamburger meat, the problem is what was on the outside, because it gets churned up into beef patty, the outside, parts of the outside are on the inside, and now you don't know where any potential contagions might be, which is why for hamburgers it is important to cook them more thoroughly than it is for steak, as an example. And then you have other things where, like, for poultry, in order to make sure, you know, you can have things that are deeper in there, so you have to cook those more thoroughly just to make sure you get that. But, you know, all that's an aside. There's one little part about that, and I can kind of understand a family recipe not paying attention to that, because you would have a very different flavor if you were going for a well done. I mean, beef jerky is not rare, you know, it's you know, intentionally, well, I was gonna say turn it into charcoal, but it's not quite that bad. But, you know, there is, you know, sometimes flavor profiles that you go for by doing that. So I can kind of respect the fact that the chief was doing that, but to outright dismiss the point that he's cooking off the juices doesn't make him look too good. And, you know, that's just one thing. But then, so I don't know much about cooking clams myself, but our main character actually shows that he understands cooking stuff, and he'd actually done some stuff, and that he was preparing the clams, and these other idiots in his office are just like, oh yeah, we took the towel off, and he's like, you weren't supposed to, blah blah blah, and they call him a control freak, when that's not a control freak. That's, the guy fucking knows how to cook. Apparently none of them do. They're just like, oh yeah, we cook it, what could go wrong? It's like, yeah. And he was suggesting how to make it go better, and he was also giving you advice on how to fix the problem you were causing, because apparently if you keep the clams dark, I guess they spit out some of their sand or their salt, so that you know, they're not as thoroughly salty. You can actually taste other things in them. And he tells them they can fix it by just not salting them at all, and they're calling him a control freak. And now it's like, no, it stepped the boundary from him being a control freak to they're all projecting they are control freaks, and they are fucking idiots, and they don't know what they're doing, and they don't listen to people who tell them stuff. Especially since, you know, when you're in a group cooking thing like that, usually somebody knows who's cooking what. So if somebody brought clams, they probably brought clams either expecting to know how to cook it or knowing somebody else would. And so usually you would kind of have ownership of food like that, but none of them think about it. They're just a bunch of fucking mindless cows just eating whatever is in front of them, which is kind of a bad thing to say, because, you know, cows have some good intelligence to them, and they aren't completely situationally unaware like I'm trying to describe, which would probably make them more like chimpanzees, because I think orangutans are generally very situationally aware, and I don't know. At this point, I'm going off on a very weird tangent, especially when it's just about, no, they lost my respect because he wasn't being a control freak. He was actually just really concerned about the fact that these people don't know how to cook and are ruining their own food. Especially since for one of those things he apparently took ownership of cooking something the right way. But, you know, I digress. I guess on another note, for the other characters in the show, there was a notable bad guy. But most of them were very, they're not forgettable per se. Again, you know, mishaps with cooking, whatnot. But they don't strike you as entertaining as I think the creators would have hoped. Again, you know, not bad. You had these people who dress up as other people, which is kind of neat. But you had these two girls who did some good digging up groundwork sort of thing. But you know, for the most part, they were there. You could tell them apart. Really good character designs in that regard. But at the same time, I wouldn't expect to remember any of them a couple of weeks from now, because beyond that, they don't leave as strong of an impression as these characters. Now, to give them credit, especially him, like, he probably could be really easily forgotten if he wasn't a main character. And obviously, we see the show a lot through his eyes, so his even though he kind of comes off as a baseline stabilizer sort of person, he still, you get a feel for his character, especially since there's a bit of a refreshment of having a competent non-superhero main character, I guess. Because that's the other thing. It's not like he's competent enough to be an action hero. He just holds his own pretty damn well. So he doesn't strike you as like this Rambo person, but he doesn't strike you as somebody that you would want to push around at all. And she, of course, you know, has got the weird knight-looking thing going for her. So, I guess, I was trying to think if maybe the corner friend is a little bit better than the other co-workers. But I don't know. Didn't get too much impressive. There's ideas and stories there. The characters have their own interesting thing. Somebody really into this could probably actually dig around and find some fun things about the characters, but I don't think the average person would. So, you know, that's everything, I guess, about it. So overall, you know, it was kind of neat to have on, especially for the kind of week where I was, I think, mostly distracted working on VR chat avatar stuff. In fact, what am I doing tonight? I have to decide, because this is the time when normally I would be going live. I know some of y'all have been asking about more cooking stuff, and I think the next thing that I would try and talk about, if I did, would be pasta, just because, you know, I don't actually cook a whole lot of stuff myself. I understand some of the ideas, but in practice, I don't even make my own stir fry. And I used to make it and make an entire week's worth and just eat that for the week. And that was pretty good. It was just kind of, it's the same problem with the pumpkin pie. It's just, was I willing to continue putting that amount of time into it, especially as I'm getting tired and not want to go out as much? And, you know, this week is not easy for that because it's really fucking hot out there. I think it was 106 yesterday. And that's 106 degrees Fahrenheit, in case there's anybody that normally measures temperature via Celsius. That would be higher than human fever temperature, I guess. Like, I think if you had that kind of temperature as a person, I think you'd have to be hospitalized. So if you don't know your Fahrenheits, you know, it's really fucking hot. That's why I'm trying to keep hydrated. But pasta. The reason I think that would make an okay video is because I think I would have interesting thoughts to inject in there. Because that one I go a little freeform with the seasoning and the creation of the sauce. I actually create my own sauce from scratch. And some of it is inspired by my dad's own sauce that he used to make from scratch. But there's some changes there, which means there's some interesting thoughts there. Like, I can give a recipe, but at the same time, I can give some of the thoughts behind, well, this is what I was experimenting with and why I tried it. I mean, I guess I do that a little bit, because, like, my omelets, see, I'm starting to recognize more easily why some of the omelets near the end of the week aren't so good, and that's because I keep tolerating the bell peppers not smelling like bell peppers at the end. When they stop smelling like bell peppers, even if they don't smell like they're going to make you sick, you should probably just toss them, because at that point, they're not seasoning things correctly. And I've been playing around with some interesting seasoning for my omelets. In particular, I'm adding just a dash of curry and a dash of cinnamon, and I'm using garlic and onions. And this is in place of bell pepper. You know, I don't add a whole lot of any of that because I want it to be a flavor that's just kind of added to the omelet, because bell pepper isn't a very strong flavor, but it does add an interesting thing to the omelet. And probably the interesting one there is the curry. I mean, I know cinnamon could also be surprising to some people, but you've seen egg dishes out there with cinnamon in them before. French toast being a particularly notable example. But this one's definitely going very light on the cinnamon, so it's just kind of a subtle flavor that you probably wouldn't be able to identify. And the curry was intended to be the same, but I think it's a little stronger, and it's interesting because when I smelled the curry spice, I'm like, actually, I could see egg tasting that, tasting well with that. So like, that's kind of a thing I do with spicing, is sometimes when I'm going to create a new thing with spices in it from scratch, I'll go through and I'll just smell my spices and say, okay, so like for the omelet, I decided not to put cloves in it. That might be an interesting alternative to nutmeg, but I kind of determined that that it wasn't quite right, even though I smelled the cinnamon, and the cinnamon of course smells sweet, but I decided cinnamon would work slightly better. There's a little bit of a judge there, but you know, I think cloves could probably work just fine. It's just probably not what I'm going for in an omelet. In fact, I wouldn't say the curry powder is, or I think curry powder is the wrong way, because it's powdered curry, because I think it's from the curry plant. But yeah, I don't think that on its own... What was I about to say? I completely forgot. So, you know, there's plans, but the main problem with the pasta dish is I haven't cooked it in a long time. And the main reason for that is it's kind of hard for me to get the quantities correct. There's a bit of a doing things easy method that I go by, which caused me to cook a pretty large quantity. And I used to be able to eat that entire quantity on my own, but I definitely can't do that now. And there's another pasta dish that I used to make, which was really just a chicken pasta butter with corn and green peas. The idea being that both of those are actually kind of sweet vegetables. You can have, okay, corn is really sweet. Green peas are just a little sweet. I think carrots would probably work pretty well in that as well. But the idea is, you know, that was definitely not a dish that was intended to be healthy. There was even more butter in that than there is in my omelets, and my omelets have quite a bit of butter and a lot of cheese. I think I probably also, yeah, I used to mix a lot of cheese in there as well. But that one was Parmesan cheese, because that's a more pasta-y cheese, I guess. But I don't know if I would try and cook that dish. It's not bad, but the simple pasta, tomato-based pasta sauce with pasta dish, yeah. Basically, I want to try to do that, but I think I need to time when I cook that a little better, because Mondays are usually not good on account of the fact that, you know, I go grocery shopping, and while that doesn't sound too bad, it was 106 degrees yesterday, and I walked to the grocery store. It's just a 15-minute walk away, which does mean I spent 30 minutes walking out there, but that wasn't as much worse than usual. It's really just a problem of having the two bags. They're pretty heavy, because I go through like a thing of milk and a thing of orange juice each week, so that's already a lot of weight. And you know, the shoulders, you know, I don't feel it as strongly. Yeah, I can feel some tightness there, but you know, for a fat guy like me, it's exercise, and usually I don't feel like cooking after that. And what I really need to do is cook. Now, if I do it a Tuesday night, usually that means it has to happen so late in the day that it's after this, but Tuesday is also the day when I go to Chipotle and Mighty Fine, which some of y'all might not know, because I think that might be a Texas area thing. But you know, basically I do have restaurants I like to go to, and so it's kind of hard to find time to not go to them. I think my Friday friend, I might be trying to do pasta, because I got the pasta makings, but if that doesn't happen, I'll do it on Saturday. But my plan is to kind of record that video in advance, especially since I don't know what Amazon is doing. I don't think Amazon knows what it's doing. With these weekly updates. Tonight probably would have been a good night for a supplemental video if I already had it, but I don't already have it. And the truth of the matter is, it would probably be better for me to do the one about making VRChat animations, which isn't like a make from scratch, but it is the same way of making VRChat avatars, which is usually how do you mix things that already exist to put it in there. Not how do you, okay, let's carve a face and a shoulder. You know, that kind of stuff, as neat as it is not the stuff I know. And it's the same with animations. I don't know how to make stuff from scratch, but I do know how to take bits and pieces and bring them together and to maybe change some timings or positionings or things like that. And I do have a video that was that I'm pretty sure I haven't posted yet. I haven't even edited yet, where I do create an animation from scratch, and I really do need to take that video, edit out the wait times, because unfortunately the copy and paste of animation material in Unity is not very fast, especially when the animation gets longer and longer. You can sit there waiting for like 40 minutes for a simple 10-second paste to finish, as an example. And you know, I need to edit that stuff out. The real problem is there's this weird problem with, you know, putting two animations together where the rotations aren't quite right. And I have this trick for patching that together. But when I made that video, I still wasn't completely used to fixing that. Now I'm a lot better. I can remember it a lot better, and I can get through it a lot faster. But I don't know. Basically, anime DVD collection updates are easy to do. Non-anime DVD collection updates are... they require me to go out of my way to do them, and so I have to figure out that. So, yeah, I guess the next time we have... If I do get another one anime item thing, maybe I'll just delay opening that, and I will just do a pasta day. But for today, I've got the ingredients, but unfortunately, especially since, you know, this was going to arrive and I was going to record this video hours ago, obviously I've lost my chance. That, and I've already eaten a Chipotle burrito, so actually eating the pasta I make would be nigh impossible. It's better if I record it in advance. So I'll record in advance so that I'll be prepared for the possibility. Other than that, what else is there worth talking about? Because I know I've already talked your ears out. Don't think there's anything relevant Animal Crossing wise. I am starting to get kind of fatigued playing it. I think if I finish the flower breeding project, then I might do something in order to help me isolate them so that when I come back they won't have overgrown everything. Oh, excuse me. And then I might actually slow down on my Animal Crossing playing. Instead of playing it every day, just a little bit, I might actually start taking breaks and move on to other projects. Especially, well, I don't know what those other projects will be. I was going to say, like, especially because I'm into the VRChat avatar making stuff again, but I'm definitely at a calm place between projects, so I can't even guarantee that I'd do that. I should really work on ripping all of those, but yeah. So, I guess that's everything. I hope you've enjoyed getting an update to a lot more of my life than either of us probably planned to tonight. Y'all, have a nice week.